foreign visit saw him squeeze in just about all you could expect from a transatlantic presidential trip, a meeting with the Queen, talks with the EU and indeed NATO, as well as a face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Deutsche Welle correspondent Rob Watts joins us now from Berlin. Rob, evening to you. What's the feeling in Europe following the visit?
Well, Lorna, Biden arrived with the objective of, as he put it, uniting democracies against autocracies. He wanted to show Europe that America is back. And there's a feeling here that he did successfully do that, that the United States is once again the sort of ally that it was before the Trump era and the tensions that came during that period. And there were agreements on a lot of Joe Biden's sort of priority issues, the 3 C's, for example, climate change, China and coronavirus, and I'll throw in a 4th C, we've got cybersecurity as well, all issues that are very important to Joe Biden and all issues that he was able to reach some sort of agreement with the European Union on. However, the visit did also expose where the two sides do still differ. For example, they differ on the best way to go forward with the global coronavirus vaccine rollout. I mean, the United States wants to see an end to patents, but the Europeans don't. And they also disagree on how big a threat a resurgent China is. It's a real priority for Joe Biden to compete with China's growing influence around the world. But certain European leaders, namely Emmanuel Macron, don't agree with him on how high a priority that is.
OK. Rob, there was a lot of elbow bumping, loads and loads of news conferences, but did he actually have anything to announce? What was achieved?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there was a lot of agreements announced, a lot of working groups announced, but was there anything tangible? Well, there are a couple of things that both sides would point to and say, you know, these were genuine progress that were made. There's been a 17-year-long dispute between the EU and the USA over illegal subsidies paid by each side to Boeing and Airbus. So the Americans were giving money to their plane maker, Boeing, and the Europeans were giving their money to Airbus, and they took this to the WTO, and as a result, there's been a tit-for-tat of tariffs over the past decade or so. But they managed to reach a resolution on that, and that's something that will be seen as a real piece of progress. There was also this agreement at the G7 to invest in infrastructure around the world to compete with China's own infrastructure spending in more than 100 countries, the Belt and Road Initiative that has seen its influence grow. So those are things that will be pointed at as successes, but there are also disappointments as well. For example, the 1 billion vaccines that the G7 agreed to distribute to poorer nations is actually a lower number than some people had touted. So it's not a 100% success, but overall it will have been seen as a constructive trip.
OK, the relationship with Vladimir Putin was under the spotlight, particularly after Donald Trump meeting him some years ago. What did we learn about Biden and Putin and their relationship? Well,
the White House set very low expectations for this meeting, and the consensus seems to be that they met those low expectations. All they really hoped to achieve was that at a time of ever falling relations between the United States and Russia, that they could achieve some sort of base from which to improve relations again. And it seems like they did manage to do that. But this was, as you say, very different to the Trump meeting that we saw. You know, when we saw President Trump and President Putin sitting next to each other, having that joint press conference, there was none of that this time. There were separate press conferences by President Biden and President Putin. Putin described the talks as constructive, and Joe Biden said that they were able to find what they do agree on. But at the same time, they used those conferences to criticise each other's nations and make the occasional threat. So America is back might, to some extent, also mean that America's hostility towards its traditional foe, Russia, is also back.
All right, Rob, thank you very much for that. Have a lovely weekend, won't you?
Thank you, you too.
Now, a new app has been launched to help carers of people living with dementia to navigate